How's it going, my fellow snail sufferers? It's your missile guy. In my last plane video, I covered the F-16XL and what you could expect from it in War Thunder, since it was shown on the 2026 sticker at the start of the year. In that video, I asked you guys if you wanted an Su-15 variant covered next, and a ton of you said yes, so here it is. With that being said, let's get on to my usual disclaimer. As you can hear, I am human, so I'm capable of making mistakes. I strive to keep my information as accurate as possible for you guys, so if you catch anything off or incorrect, drop a comment below and mention it. That way my other viewers can see the correction too, and it helps me improve my accuracy going forward. As usual, everything will be timestamped below for your convenience. Let's get into it. The Su-15 traces back to a 1962 requirement. The Soviets were worried about the possibility of a Mach 3 capable US bomber like the XB-70 and needed something that could counter a high-speed, high-altitude threat. The existing Su-9 and Su-11 weren't effectively capable of countering a threat like that and were rapidly becoming obsolete. So rather than reinventing the wheel, Sukhoi took a different path and adapted existing technology, scaling it up. This was approved for production on February 5, 1962, and the first prototype, known as the T-58, made its first flight on May 30, 1962. Service entry ended up being delayed due to political infighting with the creators of the Yak series of aircraft, since the Yak-28P was already in production. However, the Su-15 proved superior in most respects and was officially commissioned for service on April 3, 1965. The key design difference between the Su-15 and Su-11 was the twin-engine layout, using the new Tamansky turbojets, which produced roughly 14,550 pounds of thrust with full afterburner. You'll know this engine as the primary one used on the MiG-21, so you already know how powerful it is just from that fact alone. The twin-engine layout forced a major design change. To keep the nose free for a big radar dish, Sukhoi moved the intakes to the sides of the fuselage, which was a visible break from the nose intake on the earlier Su-9s and 11s. The early Su-15s used a simple triangular delta wing, while the definitive Su-15TM adopted a compound crank delta wing design, which improved low-speed handling and lift at the cost of some top-end speed, ultimately capping out at around Mach 2.1. Landing speed proved to be a major issue of this shape. A landing speed as high as 186 miles per hour or 300 kilometers was needed, which required a longer runway, especially given the titanium airframe the aircraft used. That wasn't too big of a deal for the Russians, and probably won't be a big deal to us in War Thunder, since long airstrips are the baseline in the game and in real life for Russians. Finally, a fun fact, the Sukhoi had an experimental short takeoff and landing variant known as the Su-15VD, fitted with 3 lift jets and a lengthened fuselage. This obviously never went into production, but it was very similar to the Harrier in design with how it worked. So, the juicy part, the Su-15s Avionics. This heavily depends on which model we actually receive, so I cover all of them since it's pretty short anyways. The Su-15A, the initial production variant, used the RP-22 radar, developed mainly from the Su-11's radar, but with a larger antenna to extend detection range. However, this was a simple pulse radar with no real look-down capability, fine against high-flying bombers, but useless against anything hugging terrain. A later model, the Su-15TM, was the major production variant of this aircraft. It featured the RP-15M, which was a modernized variant of the RP-22, with a total search range of roughly 60 to 70 kilometers against bomber-sized targets and 45 to 55 kilometers against fighter-sized targets. It had a total tracking range of about 40 to 45 kilometers for bombers and 35 to 40 kilometers for fighters. Again, against low-flying targets, these numbers collapsed. Search range would drop to a tiny 10 to 12 kilometers for a bomber and 6 to 10 kilometers for a fighter. This is precisely why the aircraft was a designated high-altitude interceptor. Any ground clutter would heavily hurt its radar performance, making it almost useless against most flying targets. It's worth noting the MiG-25 had the same issue, yet in War Thunder it proves to be more than usable at low altitude. So we'll just have to wait and see how the Su-15 gets modeled, but this very well could end up being a severe limitation of the aircraft. Finally, there's another model worth mentioning, the rarer Su-15T, which used a derived variant of the MiG-25's Foxfire radar, but this variant was rare and wasn't really used beyond testing. The most unique part about the Su-15 is its weaponry, since it will bring a new missile to War Thunder. One I've already covered in an obscure missile series video, check it out after this one if you're interested. Its primary air-to-air missile was known as the R-8 or the R-98. It typically carried a pair, one semi-active radar variant and one IR variant, so that if the radar proved unreliable, the pilot could still fall back on the longer range munition. It also let the pilot pick a shot based on other conditions in the flight. The base R-98 had a total range of approximately 23 kilometers or 14 miles, which is rather limited, and likely couldn't be used at any farther range than that, unless you were at service altitude and launching it at a high speed, which is where most of its range would come from anyways. This missile was heavily betting on the fact that a plane would be heading towards it at a high speed. For the later era variant, the Su-15 also got the R-60, which appeared mainly in later era loadouts alongside the R-90. However, a big point of contention with this aircraft, like the MiG-25, is it lacks an internal gun. It does, however, have the ability to carry a gun pod, specifically the GSH-23 on a hard point where a gun was wanted. This could be rough though, depending on the flight model, so we'll see how it handles. There's a chance you might not even ever get to use this gun. Like the F-16XL, this aircraft was shown on the 2026 sticker and hasn't yet made an appearance in either an event or tech tree. If you watched my F-16XL video, you'll know that I guess we'd see it around the September update, potentially as a true tech tree vehicle, since it was an actual plane that flew in service, unlike the F-16XL. So assuming we stick to the timeline of when 5th gen is supposed to arrive, which is December, we'd likely see this aircraft between the September and November updates, most likely as a tech tree aircraft for Russia, since we haven't gotten a normal tech tree aircraft like this in a while. The reason I'm picking this time frame is simple. September is generally a smaller update as they gear up for the finale of the year with the November and the big December update. I believe the S-16XL is slated to be an event vehicle, the Su-15 will be a regular tech tree aircraft, but this is just my opinions, let me know what you think below. With that being said, as a low tier aircraft enjoyer, I'm absolutely hyped for a vehicle like this to be added. I believe, like the XL, it'll be a worthy addition to the game, even if it ends up being essentially a less capable MiG-25. I'm a simple man who just likes to collect cool airplanes in my virtual suffering video game, what can I say? Either way, let me know your thoughts below in the comments. I always try to read every single one and respond. Anyways, that's all I've got for you today, my fellow snail sufferers. If you enjoyed this, consider hitting that like button, and if you want to support the channel in the best free way possible, hit that subscribe button. We're slowly growing towards 4,000 subs, and I can't wait to finally hit that number. Besides that, I hope you all enjoyed. This was your missile guy, and I will see you all in the next video.